Hey, this is Pam Perry, and I am so excited today. I'm always talking about Black journalists, and I love Black journalists. Black journalists matter, right? I've been saying it way before the hashtags where Black Lives Matter and Black Voices Matter. I've just always said that because I love journalists, and I really love print journalists. I won't say that they're the real journalists, but I will say that they were probably the first journalists, right? Because print came before broadcast. But anyway, right after this, I'm going to bring up Danielle, who is with the Chicago News Weekly. All right. And I'll bring her up after this. I'm so excited because she is the real deal. All right. So right after this, I'm going to bring up Danielle.
Welcome to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast. Join Pam Perry, veteran PR strategist, Emmy award-winning producer and publisher of Speakers Magazine, who will show you how to crack the code in getting out there to get known. Each week, she either interviews her media friends, PR colleagues, or she just goes solo, offering you strategies on publicity, publishing, and platform building. So listen up to hear how to get booked on media places and on superstar stages. Now, here's your host, Pam Perry.
Hey, so you hear that the whole thing, like how to get booked in media places and on superstar stages. And so all of us have a story, and the best storytellers are those journalists. And so I have the managing editor. I'll bring up Danielle of the Chicago News Weekly. Yay!
Hi, how are you?
It's so Detroit and Chicago, we're like sister cities. So we're like cool like that. But I realized right off the bat that you had a couple of our reporters, Micah Matera, who used to be in the Detroit, Michigan market, is now in Chicago market. Mm-hmm. And then I said before we got started, we have a friend in common that you also work with in terms of doing this content creation, Cedric McDougall. So So tell us about what you're doing with Cedric in terms of the Summer Oasis Music Festival, which is like this big thing that happens in Idlewild for the last few years or so.
Yes, I work with Cedric on the Summer Oasis Music Festival. I handle his social media and marketing for the festival. And he brought me in a few years ago, and I had never glamped. I don't consider myself an outdoor person, but I saw his setup and I got completely hooked. And I did this Moroccan style tent, and I've gone overboard every year. So it's one of my favorite things about the summer. So I'm always there.
So you got to tell people what glamping is, because I didn't know what glamping was until I met Cedric McDougall. So tell us what glamping is, because Black people don't get into camping pretty much, like as a general rule. I'll just say that. So glamping is that next level. So tell them about that.
It is definitely next level. It is 5-star camping. It is literally making your outdoor space just as comfortable and luxurious as you would your home or your outdoor living space. And I can tell you, based on the attendance, it's more of us doing glamping than we think. We're all getting into it. When you come to Summer Oasis, some of those setups are incredible, and the creativity that you see from us is amazing. I love it. I love everything about it.
And it's in Idlewild, and it's every summer. Idlewild is in Michigan. It's like one of those, it was like the first, I guess you would say, retreat center for African Americans. And so Cedric is kind of like bringing that back, bringing sexy back into Idlewild, and it's parties, it's music. It's just, I don't know how he can really drop it, like really make it better every year. But I hear that he has, and I will go. Cedric, you listen to this podcast, I will be at the next one. Okay. I promise I will, because now Danielle is like, got me all excited about, yes, you got to go. So so that is one of the things. So tell us about your journalism career. We were talking a little bit about it, and really one of the main things I want people to know about journalists and why I do this is that journalists are real people. They have real dreams. They have a love for words, obviously, for writing and that kind of thing. But a lot of times when you're starting out in journalism, you don't make a whole lot of money. It's a glamour career, so that people just feel, oh, it's a glamour career, so I don't have to pay people a whole lot of money. So tell them a little bit about where you started and then where you are right now.
Well, like I said, I started out always loving to write and loving writing, but I was scared to do it. I was a recently divorced single mom of three, so I actually started out banking, but I would write on the side via my own blog, my own website, and I would freelance. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I decided to take the plunge and do something that I was passionate about. I really felt at a certain point in my life that I was stable and I wanted to pursue my own personal dream, and telling our stories and reporting the news from our perspective is something I'm very passionate about.
Mm-hmm. And what you said right there, telling stories from our perspective. And so the Black press is something that I'm very passionate about, because that's just how we have to tell our stories. Black press, Black radio, all those type of things. Speakers Magazine is my magazine. It's a Black magazine. You know, we had this one here with Stephanie Mills on the cover right here. She has
Yeah.
you know, that kind of thing. But it's always something that we want to do. So your career, you were always freelancing while you were before you took the full plunge, and so you were at Real Times Media. And so tell us what you were doing there, and then how it really evolved into Chicago News Weekly, and really the purpose of it, how it's different, you know, between all the different, I guess you say, the African American newspapers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I started out, I was working as the managing editor of the Chicago Defender and the national news manager for Real Times Media. So Real
Mm-hmm.
Times Media owns Michigan Chronicle, Chicago Defender, New Pittsburgh Courier, and the Atlanta Daily World. So I handled the national news for those publications and then ran the editorial side of the Chicago Defender, all which are legacy publications. The Chicago Defender has been in print or digital now, but has been in existence for over 100 years. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a great honor to manage that paper and be part of that legacy. And then leaving that position to come to another Black-owned, Black woman-owned physical newspaper that's based here in the city of Chicago. I got excited just at the idea of starting something new and giving Chicago, particularly Black Chicago, actual physical paper again,
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't had one in so long. So I'm super passionate about Black media and working for Black-owned publications. So I'm able to still do what I love with a company that I love.
That is so cool. And it's a tabloid. And I talked about that earlier, that I love the size of a tabloid. That matters to me. Like, you know, there was an Ebony that was full, 8.5 by 11. Then there was Jet. I always like Jet. It was smaller. You know, that was just my thing. And then so with this, it's a weekly, obviously Chicago News Weekly. And then do you cover in terms of beat, in terms of staff? If people were to pitch you, you know, which people do. Let me just say this real quick. There was a journalist today, Danielle, that says, "Oh, I can't take it. You know, I had 85 pitches, you know, 85 pitches in my DM. I don't like pitches in my DM, and I have, you know, hundreds of other type of pitches that aren't my beat or whatever." She was like, "I'm just exhausted." and and she was just kind of like really just going off, and I was like, I can't pronounce her name, but Kiera, I think is her name. And I was like, listen, okay, just like you have a job and you got to put out stories, these publicists, they got people on their back like, get me a story. So they gonna pitch, they gonna DM, they gonna do whatever they have to do, because they got people yelling at them to get a story. But I understand that you have to know the beat of the people. You just can't be throwing stuff out there. You can't be a lazy PR person and just like, oh, let me just select all and send it to everybody. That's just irritating.
Right.
So kind of tell us about the different sections that you have
Yes.
at Chicago News Weekly.
Well, Chicago News Weekly is, like I said, a weekly publication focusing on the news in Chicago from a Black perspective, African American perspective. We cover local news, local politics, national news, lifestyle, entertainment, arts and culture, Black history, sports, you name it, health,
Wow.
dollars and cents. So it is really a robust newspaper with different perspectives. We are very fortunate to have a great staff that is based here in Chicago. They live in these neighborhoods, they work in these neighborhoods, they're tapped in to the community, so they're able to report from a very authentic place and
Mhm.
report what's important to us. And it's also about presenting a different narrative of what Black Chicago looks like, especially
Mhm.
because we are talked about on a national stage, depending on which politician you listen to. So it's important for us when we talk about, communities like Inglewood and the South Side, what good is happening here, because there's so much good happening on the South Side, and there is community here on the South and West sides of Chicago. And that is stuff that's not presented in mainstream media. Those images, those stories about our entrepreneurs, our children who are doing amazing things, the businesses that are popping up in our areas. So those are the stories we like to tell with the paper.
And there's also within Chicago, there's like Hyde Park, right? That's an area, and then there's Bronzeville. I guess that's another area, and then there's other. Do you assign reporters based on location or based on the topic? So how are you? Is it like financial?
No,
Mhm.
we have beat reporters. So
Okay.
we have people who are assigned, some cover arts and culture all around the city, some cover local news around the city. And then we have other reporters who are neighborhood based,
Okay.
who will cover some of the surrounding suburbs and some of the other neighborhoods. But so many of us are kind of, if you're on the South Side, I'm in Hyde Park, Woodlawn, South Shore, Chatham. I'm there every day in these areas. So we're all pretty well versed in these communities enough that we can report on them.
Okay. So this is a question that I always try to tell people. I said, the days of roving reporters is probably not like what it was years ago, like when I first started out in journalism. So how do you get your stories? You could be in the neighborhood, you could be a roving reporter running around trying to see what's going on and talking to people on the street. But how do you get your
Mhm.
stories, and how do you like to get your stories? Ideas,
Um,
I should say.
there are a few different ways. Some we are connected to community leaders, activists, advocates, community organizations that will, let us know what's happening in the communities. A lot of us are already involved in our local school councils, our business development organizations in those areas. And then it's really a lot of just how tapped in you are.
Mm,
Whether you're talking to your neighbors, your church members, seeing things on social media. Um, those are the stories that we like to kind of pull in. Sometimes I will be on my Facebook page and I'll hear a friend talking about a new business that may have opened up in the Auburn Gresham area, and we'll go check it out. I think you get the best stories when you're tapped into your community and talking to people, and showing up at town hall meetings, community meetings, block club meetings, and
mhm,
little events, um, through your local aldermen or politicians, and connecting with the business leaders, the entrepreneurs in those areas, and you will get stories that way. It's a very organic way of
mhm.
finding stories that are authentic, finding stories that aren't really told by mainstream. And I think our readers appreciate that, because the people we profile or talk about could be their neighbors. It could be somebody they know down the street, and
Yes.
they like, seeing those stories. stories. We will give you what's happening with the government and the city, but in this kind
The
of news cycle
celebrity.
where everything's bad, people want to see, they want to hear some good news. They want some good
Yes.
news. So we like to make sure that we have that balance.
I like that. I like the fact there was a couple of local newspapers that I was a part of. One was Soul Source, and that was years ago. And basically, it was inserted in the Michigan Chronicle. It was years ago. So when Sam Logan was there, it was years ago. And it basically was like church news, kind of like what was going on, and different ministries that folded. And then there was another one called the Hub Detroit, and it's really, people want to be in the newspaper, but they also have to support it. They have to subscribe or they have to buy advertising. And so that was one of the things.
Right.
The Hub, it had great news. People love being in it. They love seeing themselves in it. But it didn't survive because it needed advertising. So how is the distribution? Are you a free paper, or people subscribe, or is it a combination of both? And to people advertise, or do you have something now, Danielle, which is advertorials? Advertorials is what Speakers is. Speakers is advertorials because primarily we're promoting speakers. So advertorials is like, it's like advertising, but it looks like editorial. So how is it so that it can sustain, Chicago News Weekly can sustain itself? What business model are you all working with?
We are a free publication, so we do not charge people to pick up our papers unless they want them mailed to their homes. Then
Right.
that's a subscription service, an annual subscription service. But we do have a really good relationship with our advertisers, local businesses in the community, city organizations, and some of the politicians, political leaders, government leaders, business leaders, conferences, health fairs. Those are all advertisements that come through our paper that help to create revenue and keep our paper sustained. We've been growing steadily and increasing our distribution every week since we launched in September. So we've been getting a lot of support from the community, which is really, really exciting and promising, that people see the value in what we do and are willing to invest in it, because it's a relationship. We like to call it an ecosystem, where, especially with our small businesses, where we are promoting your brand, and in turn you are promoting our product and our paper, because you see the value in it. So we look at those relationships as partners, not necessarily just clients.
Right. It's not transactional, it's relationships. And so the Black press is really, really important. And actually having that physical paper is real important. I always say that, digital is great. Obviously, we're always going to have that. But when you can actually take the actual paper and put it up and take it with you and read in the doctor's office, wherever it is, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, I picked up one today. We have one called the Metro Times. I picked it up today, and it was the best of. It was the best of Detroit. Now I could sit in hours in front of my computer and probably read it, or I can just flip through it and actually have it and cut stuff out and all that kind of stuff. So there's the other thing I want to ask you, Danielle. So in terms, a lot of times newspapers now, or even just publications just in general, they're doing like a lot of event driven things. So you've got the local news, and definitely you're tapped into the community. You're sharing the story from the Black perspective, politics especially. Oh my God, you're definitely going to be needed during this time after what we heard the other day. But do you see yourself doing events, sponsored events, where like, give you example, like Essence has Essence Festival, right? And Black Enterprise has a Black Enterprise conference, or the Real Times, they have, who's who, or, the top 40 under 40 event driven things make another revenue stream for newspapers. Do you all see that coming up soon, or what do you see? Yes. Okay. All right. So
Possibly. I'm hoping we eventually will do something like that. I don't know if I want to approach it from necessarily almost like a fundraising, or revenue generating from sponsors and things like that is great. But if we do any kind of celebration, I definitely want it rooted in celebrating the people in the community,
Mm-hmm.
more so than just a money making opportunity. And I think that involves us, establishing ourselves in this market, making those relationships. It's really about relationships and building that trust, and that credibility. Before, I don't want to be, an organization that's constantly asking. We want to be giving. We want to be pouring into our community and doing things that we think benefit them. And all the time, those don't always need to have a cost or revenue kind of generating um, model to it. I think eventually we'll get there, but I think using some of our larger sponsors, larger corporate sponsors, is more beneficial to tap into than going to some of the smaller businesses that might not have as many resources, and allowing them to be celebrated, um, more than just asking for money all the time. So
Yeah.
I think that's a matter of something we need to kind of look at as we kind of grow and evolve as a publication. But it's definitely something that I see happening in the future.
Yeah, that's part of it as well. One of the things that I think McDonald's used to do a gospel festival, and a lot of the times they would partner. I'm trying to think in Detroit that we didn't doesn't do it anymore, but I think the newspaper I think would put it on. Then McDonald's would be the sponsor, and it'd be like McDonald's Gospel Fest or something like that. But it was promoted through the newspaper, and so obviously that was an event the community loved
Mhm.
and all that kind of stuff. We had Clark Sisters, Fred Hammond, all the Winans, all those kind of people in Detroit, right? That was
Right.
probably you all
Right.
had the same thing too, as well. But in terms of your journalism, I guess you would say next, do you see a part of the paper also growing into digital, like having its own, I won't say its own podcast, because but like its own television station or its own, I guess you would say, give you an example. So, say for instance, Rolling Out. It's a magazine. Used to be a magazine. Used to have a tab, but now they're more or less like interactive. And then Interactive One, that whole thing. So, do you see that as part of what newspapers are really up doing next?
Yeah, absolutely. As a publication, you gotta stay current.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, we're a print publication. We'll be launching a digital platform soon. From there, we'll be launching a podcast and possibly, some video series. But we like to
Good.
have all of those. Because then you're
Yeah.
tapping into different demographics. There's some people like me that love to hold books and hold papers and read them.
Me too.
I
Me
love
too.
that. And there are others like my kids who like to use that phone and get it on the go. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to be able to provide the news in a variety of ways that people can consume. Um, so we're able to stay true to our roots and also stay current, and moving along with the times. I think that's very important for our survival,
Mm-hmm.
as far as in
Mm-hmm.
this marketplace.
Cool. I love that. I love that. I figured you would. So I didn't prep
Yeah.
you before that. So I was just like, I figured you would. Now there is a conference that you and maybe the team, your advertising team, could go to, or even you as well. It's called the Niche Media event. Niche Media. And basically
Mm,
what it is local newspapers that are niche within their local community, or a niche within an ethnic group, or just a niche within a niche. And it's called Niche Media. And basically they're talking programmatic advertising, right? This whole, I had never heard of that word, like programmatic advertising. What is that? And basically
right.
it was like, it was online, it was this, it was the whole thing. But I will send you that information. But it's really created for, newspapers like you. It's niche media. And then when I say, it's probably about, I don't know, 300 or so publishers from across the country. And probably I would say there were maybe 5 African Americans, but they were learning from each
Wow.
other about how to position and pivot and advertise and promote and the new way. So I will definitely send you that information, because it's not like they're trying to
Yes,
hold us back
please.
from it. It's just that we didn't know about it, and it's
Mhm.
been going on for many, many years. The last one was in DC, so it was
Yeah.
in an area that we go to. And then next year I think it's going to be in New Orleans. So it's in areas. It's not like it's
Mhm.
in Washington State or anything like that. So it's in areas where it's
No,
populated with
please,
Black people.
please.
So I will send you that. I want to just say real quick to
Yes,
Diamond.
collaboration and
Yeah, I wanted to say hi to Diamond and Afia. They joined us as well. They are joining us as well. Um, like I have Danielle Sanders. She just became, I guess it just became, but the Chicago Newsweekly.com is relatively new. It's in the first trimester, I guess you would say. It's in the
yeah,
first trimester. And it's like it came on the
yes.
scene, and she said it's been growing ever since. And the political scene is probably the hottest part of it. That because I know Chicago had a very, very duking out period of time. Yeah, so I know you all were busy, busy,
Yeah,
busy. But the so just want to
yeah.
make sure Christian Cook just joined us as well. So Christian's going to be emailing you as well. She lives in Chicago and she's an author of a
Yeah,
book.
please do.
Yes, yes. And she went to Columbia. And so she's a writer. She loves writing, that sort of thing. I love what you said though about your career when you said you started that while you were working at the bank, you were always writing stories. You were always freelancing as well. What type of
Oh yeah,
stories
yeah.
or what is the best type of stories you like to write? Is it investigative? Is it feature? What was like your favorite story that you broke or wrote or who you met?
I started out as a music and entertainment reporter, and
Oh,
I
that's fun.
remember the first time I was asked to cover politics, and I was so scared because I didn't know if I wanted to do that. But
Ooh, politics in
um,
Chicago is rough.
the more, yeah, the more I would write, the more I would meet so many interesting people. And one that comes to mind is an attorney named Jared Adams, who's here in Chicago. And he was wrongfully convicted of a crime that he didn't commit, served
Mm,
over 10 years in prison, became an attorney, and now he helps get other wrongfully convicted Black people out of jail. And he had a book
oh
called
yeah.
From Defendant to Defender. And I just love telling his story so
Oh my
much
God. Yeah.
because those stories of our strength and our resilience and our perseverance, and those are the kind of stories that excite me. I've
Mm-hmm.
been very blessed to interview celebrities and the vice president and people like that, but it's always the people that are from my neighborhood, that look like me, that grew up the same way I grew up, that have gone through things and succeeded in spite of. I always tell people I'm a girl from the South Side, who most wouldn't think I'd be interviewing the president at some time in my career. So I think I am a textbook case of it's never too late. I began this journey full time as a journalist in my 40s. So
Yeah.
it's never too late to pursue what you love and to live your dream and live your passion. And I like to tell stories that I think either educate, inspire, entertain, or uplift.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of trash journalism. I don't like a lot of clickbait, but I do want you to leave um, feeling inspired or learning something different, or being introduced to somebody that you didn't know, or seeing a
Mm-hmm.
different version of yourself as well in the reporting that we do. And I'll use my first assignment was to curate our election edition, and
Mm-hmm.
we did an entire paper on the midterms that just went through every single race and identify what these candidates stand for when it comes to issues that concern the Black community, us.
Wow.
And I had a lady come up to me after church and she said, I took that paper with me in the voting booth. It was so
Oh my
helpful to me.
God.
Thank you so much.
I
And
love
now that's when I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, so
mhm, mhm.
that's the reward.
That I love that. That is so cool. She said, "I took this with me because the trust factor." And I always tell people, I said, journalists have to vet things, and so there's the journalism integrity, there's the ethics. Um, obviously, not all journalists probably abide by it, but it is something that if you are a journalist, you're taught that. That's like part of your training. and not just like, oh,
Yeah.
like you said, it's not just clickbait, but it's actually like you're taking the time to vet the story. So one of the you reminded me when you said that a storyteller, Karen Hunter, who's on Sirius XM, the Urban View, and the Karen Hunter show, she was a journalist, and I guess she still is a journalist, but she's a radio show host now. But she kind of loved telling stories, and then went into writing books, like ghostwriting books.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see that in your future, like doing ghostwriting? I think one of the first books she did was LL Cool J. I think it was one of the ones that she did, but she's done a lot of celebrity books.
Yeah. That's actually one of my bucket list goals
Yeah,
is
yeah.
to write a book. Like I said, I started off covering the Chicago music scene, particularly the house music scene and that culture. So I would love to do something on that. There's so many things that talk about the 1980s and 90s, but we still have a very vibrant news scene here. We even have one of our house DJs that was just nominated for a Grammy
Wow.
for working on the Beyonce Break My Soul remix. So there's still
Yeah.
a very vibrant new music scene here. So I would love to do something like that. But at some point, a book is definitely in my future.
Yeah, that is, I mean, it's storytelling. It's storytelling. And I remember Karen
It
Hunter
is.
talking about when she was doing LL Cool J, she just had to interview him. So it's obviously a little bit longer than just a story, than an article. You got to do an entire book. And she went on and she did Janet Jackson. She did a whole bunch of people, just really from the standpoint that she's a good listener, and then has a way with words. And that's really like the whole point of really being a good journalist, or being a good ghostwriter or a co-author. You basically is a co-author with them. You're listening to them, and then you put your name on there as well. But yeah, that's the thing that I would could see you doing maybe one day, is working with one of the Obama girls, like helping them ghostwrite a book. That would be cool. One of them is
And
like,
I think people forget, like, listening is a huge part of being a great journalist. Listening. And like I always tell our staff writers, it's about, when you find a story, what's the story within the story?
yes.
I need people to go beyond the surface and pull out something unique and special, because we're truth tellers, we're storytellers. So I don't want our stories to sound like mainstream media. They should never sound the same. They should always have our I always say that seasoning. It should always have our seasoning on it. So I encourage, and we work with a lot of young emerging journalists here. And it's a beautiful thing to just kind of see them grow and get more confident in their writing. And you see it as you watch their reporting kind of improve. Their eye and their ear gets very fine-tuned. And I think people, it's a good thing to find stories, but it's also about going deeper and asking more questions. So I would say journalists were kids that always ask too many questions, because I sure was one of them.
They want to be, they're nosy. They don't just walk past something. It's like, I'm always curious. I'm nosy. I want to know what's going on. It's like, I'm going to be observant. My peripheral view is very keen. It's like I'm looking at what's going around me all around. So in terms of the deadline with the weekly, just so that people can kind of understand, are you more or less like assigning stories on Monday, and then by Friday they're done, or you're finishing up on Monday? Give us a little bit of the schedule.
So our paper comes out every Wednesday.
Okay.
We have deadlines depending on, we like to have everything in and ready to go to print by Monday, but depending on, like an election day, we were down to the wire Tuesday night. I was here until 11 o'clock trying to finish things up. But for the most part, we do assign some stories, and then some of our writers pitch stories that they want to do. Depending on what the story is, they may need a week, they may need 2, they may need longer if it's an investigative piece. So we meet every week to discuss what we want to write about, what we think is important to write about, and we plan around that. So my job is to make sure that every article that is included in our weekly publication is done with intention. So we have conversations, and it's really wonderful to sit in the room with writers and editors and just see that creativity go back and forth.
Yeah.
And we debate. Sometimes, sometimes we will, why is this important? Why do you want to do this? So it's never pitching stories and explaining why you want to cover a story, why something's important to cover. We want to hear it. So we have some very intense discussions sometimes hilarious discussions, but we usually get things in by Monday evening.
Okay.
We review everything on Tuesday. That evening it goes to print. It comes out on Wednesday and we start distribution.
Oh
And then
my
we
God.
do it all over again starting Thursday.
Do it all over again. It's just like, it is relentless. It is, but you gotta love it. You have to
I
love it.
do.
And so the
You
thing
do.
that I wanted people to really hear is that you are trying to serve something up for your audience that will educate, inspire, and uplift. And
Absolutely.
if you're pitching, Danielle, if it doesn't fit that mold,
Mhm.
then probably there's something that she's not going to really try to fight to get into the paper. It's only
Right.
so much
That's
you put
correct.
in the paper. So you have to make sure that you're fitting that. And then I want people to know to become familiar with it so they can go to ChicagoNewsWeekly.com and actually look at it and hear the tone, see the tone, look at the beat, look at the bylines. I always tell people follow them on Twitter, because
Yes.
they're on there as well. And just to see, because you put your stories out on Twitter, so we see them on Twitter, so you know what you're writing about. And even, do you have op-eds? Do you do opinion editorials from the community as well?
We
So that's
do.
another
We
thing.
have experts. It's actually, our website is cnwmedia.com. And that's where we are online. We will be going fully digital. We'll have a digital platform by the end of the year, and have our physical paper come out. We'll be doing both starting 2023. So I'm super excited about that. But yes, anything that goes in that paper we think is important for the Black community to know.
Oh,
But we also encourage our readers to send us stuff. We tell them,
mhm,
you guys know people, you guys know business owners, you guys know authors, you guys know certain advocates and activists. I always tell people, send me an email. Let me know if there's something
mhm.
that you think we should be covering. Is this something, obviously we have a staff, but it's 77 neighborhoods in Chicago. So
Woo,
we're not
yes.
gonna know everything. So we do rely on our readers as well to keep us informed and let us know what you want to see, what you expect from us as journalists. I think, I look at this profession, it's not just a job. I see it as service.
It
And
is.
I want to be of service to my community, and we want to be of service with the work that we put out. We want our community to see the value in it. We want them every week to say, I want to know what's happening that concerns me. And I said, even if it's reported on a CNN or your, local big paper here in Chicago, if you want to know what we think about it, what Black Chicago thinks about it, then you need to come to Chicago News Weekly.
Mhm, mhm. I love it. I love it. I was looking at the website too. So you're gonna have, like, it's
Yes.
cnwmedia.com, but you can also get to Chicago News Weekly as well.com.
Mhm.
Right now as well. So that is good. That is good. So it has been, we went a little bit over, but it was
I
just so
know.
good. It was just so good. But Danielle, thank you so much. And if they want
Thank
to reach
you.
out to you directly, what email is best for you?
It is Danie, Danie Sanders Official @gmail.com. And that Danie Sanders Official is where you can find me on Instagram or Facebook. So
Cool.
hit
Got
me
your
up.
brand. Yes, that's it. That is your name. That is your name. So Danie official, DanieSandersOfficial.com
Yeah.
as well. So yes, so hopefully I will meet you in person and not in this little box at the
I
next
know, right?
at the next glamping event in
Yes,
Idlewild. So that
yes.
is definitely something that I will put on my list to do in 2023. So
Every
thank you.
third week in August, we come to Idlewild, and I call it summer camp for grown-ups. We have
Yes.
the best time, and Cedric will tell you, like, we're in a little competition because he always has his extravagant tent. But I tell people it's not a hot dogs and hamburgers kind of thing. It's steak and lobster tail and lamb chops. Like, it's fancy.
It is fancy. When I said that is amazing. This is outside, so it's like it's a whole culture thing. It's a movement. It's a movement. Really so thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle Saunders. I'm Pam Perry, and I'm out. Thank you. All right, bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Get Out There and Get Known podcast, brought to you by PamPerryPR.com, where you'll get insider tips on how to build your platform, pitch the media, and promote yourself with confidence. Head over to PamPerryPR.com and get the exclusive video training on the 7 must-have marketing materials you need before you pitch in order to be considered in media places or superstar stages. PamPerryPR.com, where we help you